If you want to see how to make the coolest mailbox ever, keep watching.
So I'm setting up my table saw, and I'm cutting the sides. The sides are 13.5 by 10. The front is 12 inches wide, and you can see what I'm doing is once I get to a 10-inch height, that's when I start my pitch on my roof, and I'm just using a 45-degree pitch. And I bring it over to the miter saw, and I set up my stop block that way it's lined up with the pencil lines that I made, and then I just cut basically two pieces just exactly the same way, and I end up with two identical pieces. As you can see, my miter saw didn't get the cut all the way through, so I had to finish it off with a handsaw.
Okay, before we go any further, you're going to have to pick a mailbox if you're going to make this a mailbox like I'm making here. And I picked this for a reason. There was some strategy involved in this. First, I like the construction of it, and it's really heavy. There's also another important part to this. When this door opens, it's thin. This is it. This is the door. There is no kickback. There's no bulky bottom that would require you to recess the bottom of your mailbox here.
So I measured the mailbox. It was 7 3/4 inches wide. So now I'm going to find my center on my front panel and make marks. That way I can center the mailbox and just trace it. And now I know where I'm gonna cut my opening. Now I did make pocket holes here. I wanted to make this as strong as possible. So I basically put pocket holes just on the side panels of this little box that we're making here. And I did it on 3 sides. The only side that didn't get pocket holes was the side that will meet the roof, because the roof is just going to get nailed in.
Okay, so I ended up making the roof. The video footage of that was corrupted, so unfortunately I'm not able to show it to you. But it's just pretty simple. It's 2 pieces. I cut the edges on a 45-degree angle, so that way it meets the sides flush. But you don't even have to do that, because it's going to get all covered up with this next step. So without fastening this in yet, I'm going to put my next layer on here, and this is hardy board. Mine is 1/2 inch, only because that's what I had. If I didn't have it, I would have bought 1/4 inch, because it's easier to work with, and this is overkill. So I'm gonna cut these down to size just to cover this whole thing. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the stone, which we're going to use, will adhere much better to this material than it will to the wood. If you put it straight to the wood, eventually over time with the rain, it will fall off. On here, it's not coming off. And also I'm leaving the roof open because I want to pre-drill the holes that I'm going to end up eventually mounting it into the post later on. I think it's just easier with the roof open. So let's do this, and we'll see how it goes.
I used an angle grinder here. I have a cordless one, which kind of stinks. If you have a corded one, it's better, it's more powerful. But and I put a 4-inch masonry blade on there, and it cuts real nice right through the hardy board. If you have one of these, and this is probably the easiest way to do this, you could also use a circular saw with a masonry blade, or with a circular saw with a wood carbide tipped blade. I just kind of cut through everything, and then I went back to the mailbox and I attached everything. And I actually had the correct screws for this material. There is a special screw for this material.
Okay, I slid the mailbox in temporarily. I want to see how much I got to cut this down. So the first thing I want to do is see how much it's coming out. So how much I have here. So it's a little over 5 inches. If I cut this down 3 inches, there'll be a little more than 2 inches protruding, and I'll have about 1 inch or so extended beyond the stone, which is nice. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cut this down 3 inches.
I'm going to mark inside my mailbox where I'm going to make holes so that later on I can fasten it to my post outside. And I'm just going to drill. I think I use a 3/16 bit. I'm going to make it bigger when I actually have my fasteners. I don't know what size fasteners I'm using yet because I don't have them yet. But at least the holes are there, and I know the position of them, and that's what I'm doing there. And now it's time to fasten the roof. And then I take my front and back panels, and I'm actually pre-drilling holes. It makes it easier to get these screws in. And I just use screws to fasten the roof to the front and back as well. It's not going anywhere. Okay, so we have the outside of the house covered except for the roof. The roof is cut, it's ready to go. But before I do, I had this laying around. Now, if you don't have this, don't go out and buy it. I don't think it's necessary. But this is the stuff that you use when you're installing windows. It's like a water barrier. It's similar to flashing the thieves on a roof. Since I have it, and I'm probably not going to be using this anytime soon, it'll probably end up in the garbage, I'm just going to do it, use it just for the roof. That way, there's just an extra barrier of protection against the rain and water and such. Alright, once the water barrier is set up, I'm just going to fasten the hardy board to the roof. And now you see I'm going to use a file. I'm just going to file the edge of that side panel there so that way it doesn't stick out. And when I do put stone on there, won't be in the way. Don't even know if it was necessary, but I did it anyway. I didn't want to not do it and then regret it. Now, cutting this mailbox was a real pain in the neck. This was a good mailbox. It was made well. The metal was thick, and I don't have a really good tool here. I mean, like I said, this is a cordless angle grinder, and it just doesn't have the power that a corded one does. All right, so I picked up some bluestone. It's a pretty big piece, and I'm just fitting it basically. I'm trying to find the kind of shape that I want, and trying to figure out where I'm going to make my cut. And then when I do figure that out, I kind of use the pencil and I draw some lines and I get to work with my hammer and chisel. If you want a little more information on how I actually cut this piece in half, I will provide you a link below with the video I did just on this. It's like 1.5 minutes long, and it'll help you out a little bit. The second piece of the roof was a little more complicated because it was about twice as thick. The other one was about 1 inch thick. This is almost 2 inches thick. So I ended up actually just using a circular soda masonry blade to just cut through it. That was really the easiest way to do it. It was just way too much for me to handle with a chisel. Okay, we're all ready to put the roof on. Before I did that though, I wanted to cover the mailbox because from this point forward we're going to be using stone, and I just wanted to protect it from getting scratched or damaged in any way. So I used some painter's tape and I put a cloth here, and that should be fine, hopefully. So anyway, I have this mailbox ready to go. I'm going to be mounting my thinner side first, my thinner piece of bluestone. And so I have the saw cut edge here, which is going to be mounted on top. So it's going to end up going something like this. I actually made my marks earlier, even before I cut. I made my marks of where to position this stone on here, and I checked it. The marks are still good. I made them a little darker before off camera, and we're going to be ready to go. I am going to be using just a simple tile adhesive. This is the kind of stuff you could use in bathrooms. It'll be fine outdoors. This stuff is really tacky, and it's supposed to, and I have used it on tile, it should be strong enough where this thing won't slide off, but this is also very heavy, so I don't know. This is supposed to be more, tiles won't slide off. Will something that's 15 pounds react the same way? I don't know. So I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to lay this thing flat on here once I have this adhesive on here and let it sit for a few hours, and then we'll be fine. Then I'll do the other side. So gluing down the roof was a little tricky, and what I did, I actually only did one piece of the roof per night, so that way I let it dry overnight. And you can see here I'm just like putting a whole bunch of adhesive, and I'm trying to get the right, squeezing it out and trying to get the right position on it. And then once I found the right position, I left it alone until the next day. All right, we're all set to put the stone in our mailbox. I'm using this to cut up these stones. Now, I'm not really going to be cutting them unless they're going to be used for the corners, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that, so that way it looks like it looks like the house is really made with stone. And we're going to use the same tile adhesive that we used for the roof to mount these. So let's get to it. So attaching the stone to the exterior wall is going to take some time, and I just kind of laid out all the stone I had so I can see the pieces and the shapes, and tried to make everything fit like a puzzle. And little by little, it did. You just got to play with it. My next step here is to install an arch over the mailbox with the Keystone. Let me show you what I mean. So basically, I cut these pieces out of some of the bluestone that I showed you earlier. This is the Keystone, and Keystone is going to always be a little taller than the other pieces, and it's going to be cut on an angle on each side, so it kind of slides in here. Now, originally I cut these rectangular. It didn't look so good, so I actually angled the sides on these as well, so the bottom is thinner than the top. And this allows for a shorter distance between each of the stones, so you won't have as great of a gap that's going to be filled with concrete later on. I think it's going to look nicer. So we're going to install this now and see how it looks. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you really like this video, please subscribe and hit the little bell icon so that way you'll be notified when I post new videos. So I decided to use type S concrete mortar, and I'm mixing a little bit there. It should be a consistency that it holds on the trowel, but just barely. It's easier to work with that way. And I tried a few different methods, but the easiest way was just to use my hand and kind of just get it inside all of the cracks and crevices. After you let everything dry overnight, you're going to remove the metal mailbox and you're ready to clean the stone. To do that, you're going to mix 10 parts water to 1 part muriatic acid. Make sure you do your research on this acid because it can cause serious injury if you're not wearing protective gear. I really like my new mailbox. I think I have the nicest mailbox in the neighborhood. There's only one thing left to do. A lot harder than I thought. If you are actually really planning on building one of these, I'm gonna post a new video in a few weeks, and I'll put a link down below when it's ready in the description. And it's gonna basically talk about all the things that I would have done differently now that I've built one. I've never done this before. There are some things I would definitely change, and I'd like to share that with you. So if you're going to build it, watch that video, and I'll link it to this video also, so that way people can watch both of them. If you like my video, please give me a thumbs up, and if you'd like to subscribe and hit the little bell icon in the top corner, that'll let you know when I have new video posts. Thanks again. Have a good day.